So I haven't done a video in a while because I'm in school and living life and stuff like that. But a new Star Wars movie came out, so let's talk about it. Time to do one of those videos. I have a script in front of me, so I'm gonna go from that. But yeah, you can see the title. You know what it's about. Let me preface this by saying that I'm a really casual Star Wars fan. Like, in the most literal sense, I grew up with the prequels. I really mostly watched it to watch the Jedi and Sith conflict, and pod racing was cool. But kind of beyond the films, I didn't really explore the franchise. I do remember watching the Gendy Tartakovsky show, though, on Cartoon Network back when that was a thing. And then they did that Clone Wars not sequel, the remake CGI movie and show, and I didn't follow it just because I'm like, oh, this is lame. I don't want this. The old one was better. But whatever. I haven't really explored the franchise outside of that until recently, when I started playing KOTOR a couple years back, which I'll beat one day, but I haven't beaten it yet. I just got through with Persona 5. Now I'm working on Shadow of Mordor. It's a process for me to get through video games. It takes a while. So yeah, I'm a fan. I know the basics of the franchise, essentially. But now, initially, I didn't plan to see this movie the time I did. I actually wanted to wait about a month, like I did with Rogue One. Rogue One came out, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll see that. And then like a month passed, and then I actually did see it. And it was the first time I actually was in a Regal cinema that had recliner chairs, which was great. It was the most literal, comfy movie-going experience I could ever have. And lo and behold, about a little over a year and a half later, I went back to the exact same theater I went to see something that honestly I just wasn't looking forward to. The only reason I really watched it was to talk about it on Hybrid Movies, where I was a guest. I think it was 2 weeks back. I might link that somewhere. And now that I've seen it, I can tell you what I think about it. But before I go into my gripes, let me talk about what I thought actually worked in the movie. I like how Han and Chewie meet. I like Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian. I think he was pretty good. Paul Bettany actually gave me a chuckle with his kind of wacky yet charming performance. And kind of on the flip side, Woody Harrelson, even with his kind of dumb role, can really do no wrong acting-wise. In terms of acting, he's fine. There are just some weird decisions they made in terms of writing his character. Alden Ehrenreich, he perfectly captured the spirit of Han Solo for a split second near the end on a certain desert planet, with a face that he made that made me go, there it goes. There it was. It was Han Solo right there for a split second. But other than that, he just kind of felt like a interpretation of Han Solo, or someone trying to do Han Solo, but not really the Han Solo that a lot of people grew up with. So he was okay. He wasn't bad. And kind of for what it's worth, I actually did enjoy the chemistry between Han and Qi'ra in this movie. And that's because it's a very different dynamic than what Leia and Han have. It's a little bit more older and kind of sarcastic, I want to say. I don't know. Like, the time gap isn't that massive between A New Hope and Solo, a Star Wars story. But I actually did enjoy their chemistry. But I don't think the one between Han and Leia is bad. I just think they're very different. They seek to achieve different things. Also, I thought L3-37, I thought she was hilarious. A lot of people didn't like her because they saw her as the SJW bot. But I thought that was done on purpose. I thought that was supposed to be like the joke. Maybe I wasn't supposed to laugh at it, but I found it really, really funny and just thoroughly entertaining. So I thought she was fine. Well, let's go into spoilers. It was cool till she up and died. And the movie just kind of told us, yeah, so this is where the ship's navigation system came from. Came from Lando's robot that he wants to romance. I didn't need to know that, and I don't particularly care. This movie also proves that, yes, there's more than 4 black people in space because of that one lounge singer that they have on the ship. So thanks for that. So let's go into the other things that I didn't really like, which was a fair amount, actually. Alden Ehrenreich, even though I kind of praised him a little bit, he has the unfortunate task of trying to live up to a role that is eternally etched into history and associated with Harrison Ford. This is an uphill battle if I've ever seen one for an actor. And in a way, he makes the character his own, but at the same time, He's written in a way that doesn't really feel like the Han Solo that I may remember. And I don't have the best memory of the original trilogy, especially Han's character. But kind of going to this movie, there are moments I'm like, yeah, that's a version of Han that I can see, but it doesn't feel like the same one that a lot of people meet later on in A New Hope and onwards. His motivations just feel a little bit flimsy, and his aims in life seem kind of weak, because for about 3 years past the opening, he's like, I gotta go back and I gotta save my girl. And I don't feel like as much progress as he wants to get made for it gets made. And his aims are like, I want to be a pilot and I want to fly and I want to do this stuff. But it doesn't, I don't know, his aspirations just don't seem that high. But then again, not everybody has to have like these grandiose expectations out of life. But, I don't know. I feel like it could have been a little stronger for him. So he ends up joining that band of smugglers who, honestly to me, they were a little bit more interesting than Han comes across. And then they get axed off in about 20, 30 minutes. I thought that was a waste of really great talent like Jon Favreau and Thandie Newton. I actually started to get pretty invested in them, and then they just kind of up and died, which was really disappointing. Also, even though I was entertained by L3, I know how you could have kind of made her a little bit better. I would say, make her a Twi'lek. I don't know why they didn't just do that. I feel like that might have worked a little stronger. It would make the whole thing about Lando being pansexual seem less out of nowhere in terms of like commentary. And also Twi'leks have been known to be captured and used as slaves. So as much as I admire the like leap into robosexuality and the whole aspect of like, well, yeah, it makes sense. He's in space. Why wouldn't he, sleep with non-humans? That makes sense. But I feel like the point could come across a little bit more stronger with someone whose race is very much tied to being captured in slavery. I just think that someone being humanoid might read a little bit better than just a straight up droid would. Even though she has a point, I think it's just easier to sympathize with somebody else. I don't know. It was just kind of a random and needless explanation about her becoming the ship's navigation. I don't think too many people care about where the Millennium Falcon's Google Maps come from. Enfys Nest also. And the Cloud Riders was shot to be like really epic when they revealed who they were and they all took off their masks. And immediately when the leader, Enfys Nest, took her mask off, I'm like, oh, look, it's the girl from Horizon Zero Dawn. Who the fuck are you? Like they pan out and just really focus on her like red hair and freckles and light skin. And I'm like, who's this? Am I supposed to know who that is? Like the whole time the Cloud Riders were just kind of fucking with Beckett and his crew when they could have just explained to him, hey, we're part of the rebellion. Let's team up and take down Dryden Voss and try and make an agreement or something like that. It's needless bodies and destruction and bloodshed that really didn't need to be there if they had just talked. So it just kind of felt like a needless conflict that ended up amounting to nothing. Beckett is a character I feel like needed a little bit of a tighter connection to Han, which one of the problems of this film is the short amount of time in which it takes place. I want to say this whole film takes place in under a week at most, aside from the opening, which has like a 3-year gap, which he didn't really change that much in 3 years. You would think maybe his hair or something, but no. So it really just kind of makes the pacing of the film really, really fast because it's like, okay, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, and this happened. Han had a really big week one day, like 15 years ago. Also, let's talk about the Kessel Run. The first part of the Kessel Run where they sneak into the mines, I thought was actually fine for the most part, but the actual run itself was mostly pretty clever until they introduced the weird ass tentacle monster, which was odd. Like they brought it up as a sort of a throwaway comment, said, yeah, once you go outside like the space spirals that they were traveling in, there could be like creatures out there. But Disney, I don't know what your fetish is with tentacles in Star Wars. It's been happening a lot recently. But that can't be your only source of, like, fear for the characters. It just felt uncomfortably random. And the last point I'm going to make about this film ties into my biggest issue with the film. How Han gets his last name actually made me look at the screen, turn to the side, lean back, and just go, really? That's fucking stupid. It just really felt really stupid. The dialogue was essentially, my name's Han. Who are your people, son? Where are you from? I don't have a people. I'm alone. It's like, Han Solo puts down glasses, looks into camera. You get it, everyone? That's where he got his last name from. He couldn't just have that be a name in a place with names like Starkiller or Skywalker. Solo's the one name that seems too weird for someone to have. So, discussing what my biggest issue with the film is, not everything needs an explanation, and that really is the biggest issue I take with the film. That, and it feels like there are zero stakes in this film. The Kessel Run is kind of the biggest sin of this because they try to build tension to make you think, well, how are they going to get out of this? Oh my goodness, like what could happen? And then you're like, oh, we already know that half of them make it to episode 4, so there's no weight to it. It would have made more sense if they kind of got sucked into it and then spat out where they needed to be. At least it kind of would have subverted expectations and made the whole 12 parsecs thing a little bit more tongue-in-cheek. It'd be kind of, I think it would be funnier if that's how it went down. And it might make a little bit, it wouldn't so much make a little bit more sense, but it would understandably be why everyone looks at Han and say, yeah, you made it in the most technical sense. Like, we almost died, but we got sucked into a black hole and just happened to go where we needed to go. So, like, you technically made the Kessel Run in under 12 parsecs. But no, they go to the fuel tank, hit overcharge, and pew, go on through. Like, the explanation of the ship's navigation really felt randomly tacked on. The wear and tear of the ship was more interesting to me, and that's just Han was fucking with Lando's ship to kind of create a distraction for the Empire and everything. The biggest sin in my eyes of this movie is that it essentially adds nothing and develops nothing for the characters that we know and love. Except maybe Chewie. But other than that, not too many. Nothing that was covered in this film could not have been written in a book. And that's kind of my biggest issue with the movie. This is a nothing film that exists only to try and bank off of the popularity of a few characters, especially the main one, who honestly is one of the few characters whose backstories that a lot of people don't exactly care to know about. My interpretation of Han Solo is that he's kind of this clever, asshole-ish everyman. He's not really the special like Luke is, and he's not royalty like Leia is, or the bad guy like Vader's supposed to be. And he for damn sure is not the good guy like the movie wants to make him out to be. Is he well-intentioned? Sure. But at the end, he isn't really special. He's some asshole who can fly a ship well and has a way with words and usually does it to get what he wants. He's a man who's always on the run, but he knows how to have fun while he's doing it. He may be a protagonist, but he never felt like his purpose was to be a hero, kind of like Luke's journey is. He more so seems like a person whose happenstance of life is that he through the adventure that he ends up going on by coincidence, he grows as an individual, and you end up caring more and more for him as he cares for other people. But what this movie ends up doing is just nothing important. It introduces characters who you know have to die at some point in the long run because they essentially have little to no impact to the Han that we see later on in A New Hope and beyond. Like, Kira doesn't really matter too much in the long run because he ends up with Leia and they have a son, and that's Ben, and that's like episodes 7, 8, and 9. So in the end, like, yeah, you can tell a story with her, and it might be a little interesting. I don't mind Kira as a character, but in the end of it, it's not really going to go anywhere. Like, Beckett and Drayden both die. Most of the Cloud Riders probably end up getting killed by the Empire or join the Rebels, which is a series that we already have about the Rebels. We've already seen most of the arc of Maul surviving after episode 1, so unless he really pops up in, like, Kenobi, a Star Wars story, I honestly don't care because I know he's dead for real this time by the end of it. Because his whole arc was in Rebels, the rest of his arc. And it was also in Clone Wars. And then just Han dies in 7. Chewie and Lando are probably the only ones still walking around by episode 9. So in the end, after watching this movie, none of this really matters. Because there's no, like, long-standing consequences from it. And there's not really anything learned. We historically know what happens. We're like, oh, that's how the Kessel Run happened. Oh, that's how he got the Falcon. Oh, that's how the Falcon got its navigation. Oh, that's where Han was on Corellia and his first girlfriend and how he met Chewie and how he met Lando and what Lando was like when he was younger and how he cheats at cards and blah, blah. Like, it feels so matter of fact that this whole thing could have been done in a book in a way that it doesn't feel interesting. It feels kind of shallow and a little bit corporate, and I think that's my issue with it. Say what you will about the new Star Wars movies, like Episode 7 and Episode 8 and Rogue One and all that. Like, going into Episode 7, I was fascinated with the renewed zeitgeist and kind of left having a very specifically memorable experience. That's another story for another day. Going to Rogue One, I had little expectations, but I came out pleasantly surprised with some aspects of it, and I finally felt like I saw more of a war in Star Wars rather than focusing on this one family. And even walking out of Episode 8, I was pumped because it had all these crazy changes in it, and I thought the effects on it were at least beautiful, which that's another compliment I'll give them. Star Wars movies actually generally look very good in terms of like effects and CGI and whatnot, so I'll give it that. At the end of this, I had nothing going in, and I came out with nothing. And I think that's the worst thing I can really say that a movie can do, is to make me entirely ambivalent. Is there competent stuff in it? Sure! Production-wise, the film is up to standard, like I said, but I don't want just the standard. I don't want the bare minimum when I leave a film. When I walk out of a film, I want to have some sort of reaction, be it good or bad, but the only thing that really upset me about this movie was that I felt nothing. But if you like this movie, I hope I don't take any joy from your experience. I'm a guy on the internet. So if you enjoyed it, that's awesome. I'm glad you had a good time, and I can see some redeeming qualities in this film, but for me personally, I hate Solo, A Star Wars Story.